بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اليوم حنشرح محاضرة General Anatomy لإنفراتمبرال فوسا. إعداد وتقديم الطالب مصطفى محمد وإشراف الدكتور محمد عباد حمزة. نبدأ أولا بالإنفراتمبرال فوسا، اللي هي عبارة عن irregular shape space located deep to the masseter muscles. هي مساحة غير منتظمة الشكل توجد deep to the masseter muscle، مثل ما نشوف بالصورة. هاي شكلها. هسه نحكي عن الباوندري مالتها. الانتيريور wall formed by the infratemporal surface of maxilla. الانتيريور wall يتكون من infratemporal surface of maxilla مثل ما نشوف بالصورة. posterior wall formed by styloid process of the temporal bone. هذا هو posterior surface يتكون من styloid process. The medial wall formed by lateral surface of the lateral pterygoid plate of the sphenoid. هذا الميديال wall، هذا من lateral surface of lateral pterygoid. Lateral wall formed by ramus of the mandible and coronoid process. الروف يتكون من infratemporal surface of the greater wing of the sphenoid. أما بالنسبة للفلور، there is no anatomic floor for the infratemporal fossa. نحكي هسه على contents مال infratemporal fossa. تحتوي أول شي على muscles، inferior part of temporalis muscles lateral and medial pterygoid muscles. تحتوي على ligament اللي هي sphenomandibular ligament، vessels متمثلة بالmaxillary artery and the branch والpterygoid venous plexus. أما بالنسبة للنيرف فمتكون من mandibular nerve and their branch choroid tympani branch of the facial nerve, inferior alveolar and lingual nerve, lesser petrosal nerve and the aortic ganglion. muscles أولا ال inferior part of temporalis muscles. origin مالها الأصل من temporal fossa and deep surface of temporal fascia. insertion with the medial surface, apex, anterior and posterior border of coronoid process and the anterior border of the ramus of the mandible. The blood supply by deep temporal part of maxillary artery. هذا the blood supply. nerve supply by deep temporal branch of anterior mandibular nerve. الأكشن مالتها يكون عن move of the mandible. lateral pterygoid origin مالته upper head infratemporal surface of a greater wing of the sphenoid. lower head lateral surface of the lateral pterygoid plate. insertion مالته يكون من pterygoid fossa زائد capsule auricular disc of temporomandibular joint. action side to side movement of the mandible pulls condylar process forward to depress. the medial pterygoid muscles origin مالته superficial head من tuberosity of maxilla with deep head من medial surface of lateral pterygoid plate. insertion medial surface of the ramus and the angle of the mandible. innervation from trunk of the mandibular nerve. Action, the elevation of the mandible, the projection of the mandible, side to side movement. Sphenomandibular ligament. It's a flat, thin band which attach superiorly to the spine of the sphenoid bone and become border as it descends. يعني هي عبارة عن شريط رفيع ومستقيم flat attached superiorly متصل بالأعلى to the spine of the sphenoid bone متصل بالأعلى بالsphenoid bone. It's fixed to the lingual and lingual of the mandibular foramen. It limits the station of the mandible in the inferior direction. It's slack when the temporomandibular joint is closed position. It's tight of the condyle of the mandible in the front of the temporomandibular ligament. هاي هي شكلها. Vessels. الماكسيلاري artery. الماكسيلاري artery هو أكبر largest branch of the external carotid artery in the neck. Maxillary artery originates with the substance of the parotid gland and then passes forward behind the neck of the mandible. It passes through infratemporal fossa, interpterygoid plate, pterygopalatine fossa by passes through pterygomaxillary fissure. هذا الماكسيلاري ارتري اللي هو عبارة عن أكبر تفرع بالنك يدخل للماندبل infratemporal fossa وبعدين الماندبل من خلال foramen ovale. The branch of maxillary artery, the first part of maxillary artery from the neck of the mandible to the lateral pterygoid muscles gives fiber branch, the deep auricular artery, والanterior tympanic artery, والmedial meningeal artery, والaccessory meningeal artery, والinferior alveolar arteries. The second part of maxillary artery, this part related to the lateral pterygoid muscles gives deep temporal pterygoid والmasseter والbuccal artery. The third part of maxillary artery in the pterygopalatine fossa and gives posterior superior alveolar infraorbital greater palatine pharyngeal artery, the artery of pterygoid canal وsphenopalatine arteries. هاي الصورة توضح الماكسيلاري artery وتفرعاته. First part, second part, third part of maxillary artery. Pterygoid plexus. The pterygoid plexus is a network of veins around the lateral pterygoid muscles. هي عبارة عن شبكة من الأوردة around the pterygoid muscles حول pterygoid muscles. Veins corresponds to the artery branch تنزل to the anterior branch of the maxillary artery and the infratemporal fossa and pterygopalatine fossa connect with the pterygoid plexus. These tributary veins include the drain of the nasal cavity, roof of the lateral wall of the oral cavity, all teeth, muscles of infratemporal fossa, paranasal sinus and the nasopharynx. In addition, the inferior ophthalmic veins from the orbital drains through the infraorbital fissure into the pterygoid plexus. Emissary veins connect the pterygoid plexus in the infratemporal fossa to the cavernous sinus through foramen ovale. The pterygoid plexus connect anteriorly very deep the facial veins with the facial veins on the face. هاي التركويد plexus. النيرف المانديبولار نيرف هو الديفيجن الثالث of trigeminal nerve والأكبر طبعا passes through foramen ovale through to the infratemporal fossa, origin the gastrin ganglion of the cranial nerve, located in the lateral wall of cavernous sinus, lies superficial to the medial pterygoid and deep to the lateral pterygoid muscles. هذا هو mandibular nerve تفرعاته. branch of the mandibular nerve in the infratemporal fossa. branch from the main trunk ينقسم إلى تفرعين المننجيال branch والميديال pterygoid nerve. Anterior branch gives 5 branch buccal nerve والmasseteric nerve والdeep temporal nerve والlateral pterygoid nerve. أما بالنسبة للposterior branch ثلاث تفرعات يحتوي auricular temporal nerve والlingual nerve والinferior alveolar nerve. هاي الصورة توضح المانديبولار نيرف من دخوله من الفورامين أوفالي جميع تفرعاته. meningeal nerve the spinous nerve pass v spinosum foramen and enters cranium sensory nerve innervation the durometer. Medial pterygoid nerve innervation medial pterygoid tensor v palatine and tensor tympani muscles. Buccal and masseter and deep temporal lateral pterygoid nerve innervation مسؤول عن innervation the muscles with the same name except buccal nerve. Buccal nerve is sensory and innervate the inner surface of the cheek. كل هذين العضلات موتر عدا الباكل نيرف sensory. So innervates the inner surface of the cheek. هاي صورة توضح جميع النيرفات. وهذا الأوريكولار نيرف. auricular temporal nerve. It is the first branch of the posterior division of the mandible nerve and originates as two roots which passes posteriorly around the medial meningeal artery. Its curve is lateral around the neck of the mandible, then a second deep to the parotid gland between the temporomandibular joint and the ear. It carries general sensation from skin over the large area of the tempora. Sensory innervation of the external ear and the external auditory meatus and tympanic membrane and temporomandibular joint. Also deliver مسؤول عن نقل post ganglionic parasympathetic nerve from the glossopharyngeal nerve to the parotid gland. And lingual nerve, it is the sensory branch of the posterior trunk of the mandible nerve. The lingual nerve, the first scans the seconds between the tensor and palatine muscles and the lateral pterygoid muscles, where it's joined by the chorda tympani nerve, and then the seconds across the lateral surface of the medial pterygoid muscles to enter the oral cavity. As the lingual nerve passes the medial surface of the mandible, immediately inferior to the last molar teeth. It's a danger when operated on the molar teeth and gingiva. The lingual nerve passes into the tongue and of the lateral surface of the hypoglossal muscles, where it attached to the submandibular ganglion. The lingual nerve carries general sensation from the anterior 2/3 of the tongue, oral mucosa on the floor of the oral cavity, and the lingual gingiva association with the lower teeth. The lingual nerve is joined by chorda tympani, branch of the facial nerve, which carried taste from the anterior 2/3 of the tongue, and parasympathetic fiber of salivary glands below the level of the oral fissure. وهذه صورة توضح lingual nerve. هذا هو lingual nerve. مسؤول عن التذوق. هذا أيضا صورة أخرى lingual nerve. Inferior alveolar nerve, it's a major sensory branch of the mandibular nerve. هو العصب الحسي الرئيسي بالmandibular nerve. Innervate all lower teeth and gingiva and the mucosa and the skin of the lower lips of the chin. Innervate lower teeth, الأسنان السفلية والغشاء المخاطي of the lower tip or lower lip and the skin of the chin, الجلد of the chin, الذقن. It has one motor branch which innervates the myloid muscles and the anterior belly of the diastematic muscle. The seconds and then enters the mandibular canal through the mandibular foramen. Just before entering the mandibular foramen, it gives the nerve to the myloid muscles to innervate the myloid muscles and the anterior belly of digastric muscle. The inferior alveolar nerve passes anteriorly within the mandibular canal to the lower jaw. It supplies molar and second premolar teeth and associate labial gingiva, and then divided into the two terminal branch, the incisive nerve and the mental nerve. هاي ينطي تفرعين mental nerve والincisive nerve. تكون تفرعات من inferior and the other nerve. الchordae tympani nerve. The chordae tympani origination from the facial nerve. أصلها من الfacial nerve. And carrot taste تنقل حاسة الذوق from the anterior to the 2/3 of the tongue, and the parasympathetic innervation of all salivary gland below the level of the oral fissure. It's enter the infratemporal fossa and join the lingual nerve. Lesser petrosal nerve. The lesser petrosal nerve is a branch of the tympanic plexus in the medial ear, which had origin from the branch of the glossopharyngeal nerve. It carries mainly parasympathetic fiber to the parotid gland. The tympanic nerve, which is a branch of the glossopharyngeal nerve, enters the middle ear of the enters the participate in the formation of the tympanic plexus on the promontory of the middle ear. The lesser petrosal nerve is a branch of this plexus. The lesser petrosal nerve contains mainly preganglionic parasympathetic fiber. It leaves the middle ear and enter the medial cranial fossa through the small opening on the anterior surface of the vitreous part of the temporal bone. The lesser petrosal nerve then passes through the foramen ovale to the mandibular nerve. In infratemporal fossa, its synapse in the otic ganglion located on the medial side of the mandibular nerve. The post-ganglionic parasympathetic fiber leaves the otic ganglion and joins the auricular temporal nerve, which carried from the parotid gland. وهذا هو lesser petrosal nerve اللي هو يكون عبارة عن جزء أو برانش فرع من التمبانيك plexus يتحد ويا mandibular nerve. Aortic ganglion located inferiorly to the foramen ovale, medial to the mandibular nerve. Preganglionic fibers from the inferior salivary nucleus associated with the glossopharyngeal nerve. The parasympathetic fibers travel within the branch of the glossopharyngeal nerve, the lesser petrosal nerve, to reach the otic ganglion. Post-ganglionic fibers along the auricular temporal nerve, branch of the mandibular division of the trigeminal nerve, provide psychomotor innervation of the parotid gland. Sympathetic fiber of superior cervical chin pass through the otic ganglion. They travel within the medial meningeal artery to innervate the parotid gland. وهذه هي parotid ganglion تكون medial to the lingual nerve عفوا mandibular nerve. Communication. The infratemporal fossa communicates with the أولا temporal fossa من خلال space below zygomatic arch. The orbital من خلال inferior orbital fissure. The medial cranial fossa via foramen spinosum, foramen ovale, foramen lacrum. The parotid the pterygopalatine fossa من خلال pterygomaxillary fissure. هاي بعض الارتباطات من خلال الأورام مثل ما واضح بالصورة. مرتبطة الأوربيتال والميديال cranial fossa ومن خلال pterygopalatine fossa. هنا نهاية المحاضرة. أتمنى كانت محاضرة بشرح مبسط. شكرا للاستماع.